You're thinking about reaching out to them. You already know why the relationship ended, but right now you miss them enough to question everything. Before you send that text, I need you to ask yourself, did anything actually change, or are you just hurting right now? Because if nothing changed, talking to them may make you feel better right now and put you back in the same situation tomorrow. You can love them, you can miss them, and you can also know that going back is not healthy for you. Missing someone is an emotion. It is not an instruction to return. And in this episode, I'm going to help you understand what you're really missing, why the past feels better when you're lonely, and how to move forward without pretending the relationship meant nothing. Welcome to Oh We're Talking, where every life is a masterclass. You come for the story and you leave with a breakthrough. And today, we're talking about what happens when you still love somebody, but deep down you know you can't go back. If you clicked on this episode, I'm going to assume there is somebody on your mind, okay? Maybe the relationship ended recently, or maybe it ended years ago, but every now and then something happens and you find yourself thinking about them all over again. Maybe you already tried going back and you ended up facing the exact same problems you had before. Or maybe you haven't contacted them, but you keep having the conversation in your head. Oh, what would I say? What would they say? Oh, well, what if they've probably changed? What if I've changed? What if we tried again and finally got it right? And listen, I'm not here to tell you that people never change. I'm not even here to tell you that nobody should reconcile. There are relationships that end, both people do real work, and they are later able to build something healthier. That does happen, but real change requires more than two people missing each other. So, this episode is for the person who already knows that returning would cost them something they worked very hard to get back. Their peace, their stability, their confidence, their self-respect, maybe even their sense of who they are. You know you can't go back, but your feelings haven't completely caught up with what you know. And I think we need to make room for that, because people will tell you, hey, just move on. They'll say, oh, you need to forget about them. They'll even tell you to block them and delete every picture and throw everything away and start dating somebody else and act like the relationship meant nothing. But you can do all of that and still miss someone. You can know the relationship wasn't right and still grieve it. You can be the person who ended it and still be hurt by the ending. You can know you deserve something different and still have moments where different feels unfamiliar and lonely. All of those things can be true. The goal of this conversation isn't to make you stop feeling. The goal is to help you stop allowing one feeling to make the decision for you. So I want to start with the part that confuses people the most. Why you can still miss someone you know you needed to leave. When you say, I miss them, slow that sentence down for a minute. You may genuinely miss the person. You may also miss having someone to call, being wanted, physical affection, your daily routine, or even the future you plan together. You may miss who they were when the relationship first started. Before, of course, everything became difficult. And honestly, it could be several of those things at once. So instead of stopping at, I miss them, ask yourself, what am I missing the most today? The person, how I felt with them, or the life I thought we were going to have? There is no shame in the answer, but the answer matters, because you can't respond wisely to a feeling you haven't yet understood. You may think you want the relationship back when what you really want is just companionship. You may want confirmation that you matter to them. You may miss how hopeful you felt in the beginning, or you may still be attached to the person you kept believing they would eventually become. And again, none of that makes the love itself fake. I miss them can contain several different losses, and those losses don't all require the same response. Some of them need to be grieved, some need to be rebuilt in your current life. Some need support, some may even need time, but you won't know what you actually need if every feeling immediately becomes, maybe I should call them. Pain after a decision does not prove that the decision itself was wrong. Sometimes pain is simply part of accepting that the right decision still came with the loss. And once you start separating the person from everything else you lost, pay attention to when the feeling gets the strongest, because loneliness can in fact change how you remember the relationship. Maybe it's late, or maybe it's early morning for you. Maybe you're by yourself. Maybe you even had a very hard day. Maybe you saw somebody maybe announce an engagement. Maybe you went somewhere that the two of you used to go, or maybe even, which gets a lot of people, a song came on that immediately made you think about them. And suddenly you're remembering the best parts, the first date, the trip, the conversation where you thought, man, like, this person really, really gets me. You remember how they showed up for you during maybe one particular season in your life. You remember the thoughtful things they did and how close the two of you were at one point. Those memories may be completely real. But when you're lonely, your mind may leave out the context surrounding them. It may not immediately remind you how anxious you often felt, how many times the same conversation happened over and over again, or how much of yourself you were editing to keep the relationship together. You may temporarily forget how lonely you sometimes felt when you were still with them. You may forget the moment when you finally admitted, I cannot keep doing this. That doesn't mean the relationship itself was entirely bad. It simply means the good moments were not the entire relationship. So when you find yourself missing them, try to remember beyond the best day and the worst day. Think about what you genuinely loved, and then think about what repeatedly hurt, what the two of you tried to fix, and what never, ever changed. Pay attention to how you felt during the ordinary days, because most relationships are lived there. The question isn't whether the two of you ever had something good. You probably did. The question is whether there were enough honesty or willingness and consistent change to create a relationship that could actually work. That is where you have to be careful. One quiet weekend doesn't give you new information about the relationship. Seeing them looking good all online, it doesn't mean the two of you are suddenly ready for each other. Hearing that they're probably dating somebody else doesn't change what happened between you and them. And missing the way they held you doesn't resolve the conversations the two of you could never finish. When your mind brings back all this good, you don't have to reject those memories or punish yourself for even having them. A lot of us are hard on ourselves then. Just remember the rest of the relationship too. But even after you remember the whole relationship, you may still be thinking, okay, but I love them. And I believe you. This is where a lot of people tend to get stuck. You can genuinely love somebody and still be unable to build a healthy life with them. That can be a difficult thing to accept because many of us were taught that love was supposed to be the final answer. If two people really love each other, they should be able to figure everything else out. But a relationship has to function in everyday life. Compatibility shows up in how two people communicate, how they handle disagreements and discomfort, and whether they can even repair things after somebody gets hurt. And that itself includes trust, shared values, expectations around commitment, and whether both people are building toward the same kind of future. It also shows up in whether both people can have needs. If one person has to keep adjusting, explaining, forgiving, or becoming smaller to maintain the relationship, love does not remove the effect that has on them. When pressure came, what usually happened between you two? Did both of you work on the problem, or did one person carry most of the responsibility for keeping the relationship together? Those answers tell you more about the future of the relationship than how much the two of you miss each other. You can care deeply about somebody and still have very different expectations around money, family, faith, communication, lifestyle, even commitment. That does not automatically make either one of you bad. Sometimes two people are trying to save a relationship while quietly wanting two different lives. Sometimes one person is ready for a level of responsibility the other person simply is just not ready for. Sometimes both people have good intentions, but the way they respond when they're hurt continues to damage the relationship. And sometimes you can understand exactly why someone behaves the way they do, while also accepting that you cannot continue experiencing that behavior. Understanding them, it doesn't automatically make the relationship workable. So instead of asking, do I still love them? Look at what the two of you were actually creating together. Think about who you are becoming inside the relationship and what would need to be different for it to become healthy. Then ask the question that matters most. Has any of that actually changed? Not could it change, not maybe they'll change now that I'm gone. What has changed? And what evidence do you have? Because you cannot make this decision based only on who you hope somebody will eventually become. You have to consider who both of you are right now and what both of you want and what both of you have consistently demonstrated that you're willing to do. If you know the two of you cannot build the same life, missing them does not remove that truth. And even when you know the two of you weren't able to build something healthy, you may still feel pulled toward what you already know. That's where grief can really make this a lot harder. When a relationship ends, you're not only losing what happened, you're also losing what you expected to happen. Maybe you thought the two of you would get married and live happily ever after. Maybe you thought you would even grow old together and have children, and maybe you had names picked out for those children. Maybe you talked about a home or a city or a business or a holiday or family stuff. Maybe you even believed this was the person who would finally stay. So when the relationship ends, you have to grieve a future that felt real to you, even though you unfortunately never got to live it. That grief can make the past feel more comforting than the life you're currently facing. The past is unknown. You know that person. You know what being with them feels like. Even the problems are familiar. Your future, however, may feel completely open. You don't know who you'll meet. You don't know how long this healing process is going to take. You don't know whether you'll love somebody that deeply again. And you don't know whether leaving will eventually, you don't even know if leaving made sense. And when you're sitting inside of all of that uncertainty, returning to what you know could feel easier than continuing into a life that you cannot see. That does not necessarily mean the past was safer. It means it was familiar. There's a difference. Some of you aren't struggling because you believe the relationship was healthy. You're struggling because starting over is exhausting. You don't want to learn another person. You don't want to tell your story in my favorite color all over again. You don't want to date, and you don't want to be disappointed again. You don't want to accept that all the time you invested in a person didn't produce the future you expected. So going back starts to feel more appealing, but before you go back, ask yourself this. Do I want this relationship, or do I want the relief from the uncertainty I feel right now? Because returning may give you immediate relief. They answer the phone, you hear their voice, the disconnect then will settle down. For a moment, you will feel connected again. But then what? What happens when the original issue returns? What will happen when the conversation you avoided with them becomes necessary again? What happens when the part of you that knew you needed to leave starts speaking again? The relief may be real, but it may also be temporary. You should not have to rush into a relationship, old or new, just to avoid learning how to be with yourself. And if you're thinking, but I hate how this feels, I hate it, I understand. You don't have to enjoy this season, and you don't have to pretend that being alone is all peaceful and jolly and empowering. Some days it's going to be quiet in a way you don't like. Some days you'll wonder if they're thinking about you. Some days you'll want the comfort of what you already know. But discomfort is not always a signal that you should reverse the decision. Sometimes you're simply living through the part where your life is changing. Now, accepting that the relationship couldn't continue doesn't mean you have to convince yourself that the whole thing was terrible. I want to be careful here because I don't want this episode to become your ex was terrible and you, my friend, were perfect, and now you need to prove that they lost the best thing that ever happened to them. I don't want that to be that, okay? That itself may make you feel good for a few minutes, but it usually doesn't help you heal, honestly. You do not have to hate someone to know the relationship needs to remain over. They may have good qualities. They may have loved you in the ways they knew how. They may have even been there for you during a difficult time. There may be things about them that you will always appreciate, and the relationship still may not have been sustainable. Some endings don't have one villain. Sometimes there are two people with two different needs, different levels of readiness and communication, patterns, or different ideas about what the relationship should become. Sometimes both people contributed to the problems. Sometimes you hurt each other while trying to still hold on to each other. Sometimes one person caused more harm than the other. And honestly, honesty requires acknowledging that too. And in relationships involving abuse, manipulation, coercion, or threats to your safety, you do not need to force yourself into a perfectly balanced story because your safety matters. I want you to get support from people qualified to actually help you protect it. But for everybody else, healing may require enough honesty to see the relationship without worshiping it and without turning it into something completely evil. Here's an exercise that I want you to try. Write down 5 things. Number 1, what I genuinely loved about the relationship. Number 2, what consistently did not work. Number 3, what I needed but was not receiving. Number 4, what I did that contributed to the problems. Number 5, what would have to change before this relationship could ever be healthy. Take your time with this. All right? Don't Don't use the first answer that makes you look good. All right? Don't use the answer that takes all the blame altogether. Tell the truth, okay? Maybe you were afraid to communicate directly. Maybe you kept expecting them to know what you needed without saying it. Maybe you stayed after your needs were repeatedly dismissed and resentment became the way you communicated. Maybe even they apologized but didn't change their behavior. Maybe you both avoided the conversations that would have revealed the two of you wanted two different things. Maybe you kept calling it a rough season when in all actuality it had become the normal pattern of the relationship. Write it down. Taking responsibility for your part does not mean the entire ending was your fault. And acknowledging their humanity does not require you to give them access to you again. You can say, I understand why they struggle with that, while also saying, I cannot continue living with the impact of it. You can forgive someone and still keep that boundary. You can remember the good without using it to erase everything else. That is what emotional honesty looks like. And all of this becomes much harder in the moment when you actually want to contact them. Because that's when the conversation stops being theoretical. Maybe you already have the messages in your phone, open, ready to send. Maybe you typed something and deleted it. Maybe you've been checking their pages and hoping that they've posted something that gives you some sort of idea of how they feel. Before you do anything, pause and name what you want from the contact. Maybe you want to hear that they miss you too. Maybe you want an apology or reassurance that you actually mattered or proof that they haven't moved on. You may want comfort, physical affection, another chance, or it's simply the feeling of being chosen by them again. Sometimes you don't even want the relationship back. Sometimes you just don't want to believe that they can live without you. That is difficult to admit, but it's human. All right. Now try finishing this sentence. I want to contact them because I want to feel what? Comforted, wanted, remembered, forgiven, desired. Is it less alone, hopeful again? Once you can name the feeling, you can decide how to care for that need without automatically reopening the relationship. If you need comfort, you may need to call someone who can support you without making tomorrow more complicated or even difficult. If you need to say everything you never said, write it down before deciding whether it needs to be delivered in a message. If you want confirmation that you mattered, remember that an ending does not erase the effect that two people had on each other. And if guilt is driving you, take responsibility for anything you genuinely need to. Just be careful that you aren't using reconciliation to avoid the work of forgiving yourself. Now, ask yourself one more thing. If they respond exactly the way I hope they respond, what happens afterward? They may say they miss you. They may still love you. They may want to see you again. And that will probably feel good in the moment, but eventually the relationship will still have to face the reason it ended. The two of you will still need to address the trust, the compatibility, the communication, timing, or commitment issues that were there before. Their response may give you relief without giving the relationship what it needs to be different. The urge to return can tell you what still hurts. Pay attention to that. Be honest about it. Take care of the part of you that is hurting. But give yourself enough time to decide whether contacting them would genuinely support your healing or simply interrupt the discomfort for one night. So if contacting them isn't always the answer, what do you do with the fact that you still care? How do you respect what the relationship meant without reopening something you know needs to stay closed? One of the hardest things to accept is that moving forward does not always require you to stop loving the person first. Sometimes people wait to leave emotionally until they feel absolutely nothing. They think, oh, once I don't care, then I'll be finally free. But you may care for a very long time. You may always want good things for them. There may always be a part of your life that reminds you of them. That doesn't mean you are stuck. It simply just means that the relationship mattered. You do not have to delete the meaning of the relationship to accept its ending. You can appreciate what you learned. You can keep the memories that were indeed good. You can admit that they helped you through a very, very difficult time in your life. You can acknowledge the ways you grew all together. You can be grateful that you met them, and you can still decide not to return. Those things are allowed to exist together. Honoring the love might mean allowing yourself to grieve instead of immediately trying to replace them. It might mean writing a letter that you never ever send. It might mean praying for them privately without reopening communication. It might mean returning their belongings and not creating another reason to meet them. It might mean unfollowing them, not because you hate them at all, It's all because watching their life is interrupting your ability to live yours. It might mean asking mutual friends not to give you updates for a very long time. It might mean accepting that friendship is not possible right now, even if both of you eventually hope to be on good terms later on. And if you share children, family connections, work, or other responsibilities, honoring what happened may require clear boundaries around what you discuss, when you communicate, and what access you give to each other emotionally. The exact boundary will look different for different people in different situations, but the question is the same. Does this contact support the life I'm trying to build, or does it keep returning me to the emotional position I worked hard to leave? And please don't use, I just want to make sure they're okay, when what you really want is to feel connected again. You can care about them and still be honest about why you want access. You can wish them well without personally monitoring whether they are well. You can love somebody and accept that your relationship with them has ended. That's not fake, it's not cold, and it doesn't mean the relationship meant nothing. It means you are no longer requiring the relationship to continue in order for the love to have been real. Now, understanding all of this may help you today, but eventually something is going to bring the old feelings back. So, with that said, you need to decide what you're going to do before that moment arrives, because it will. Sometimes that means they will literally contact you. Sometimes it means a memory will hit you. Sometimes it's an anniversary. It can be a holiday, a song, a familiar place, or a difficult week. Sometimes it happens because you're just doing well, and that itself surprises people. You may think you'll only miss them when you're struggling, but sometimes, you'll achieve something and immediately think, oh, I wish I could tell them. And that moment itself can hurt. So I want you to decide in advance what you're going to do when it happens. First, don't make a relationship decision at the height of an emotional moment. Give yourself time. You do not have to send the message today. You do not have to answer immediately. You don't even have to decide what their contact means before you even had time to think. Second, keep a private note that tells the full truth about why the relationship ended. It's not a hateful note at all. It's not a list designed itself to make them look bad. I want you to write down the actual issues, the conversations, what you tried and what you needed, and what finally made you accept that the relationship could not continue as it was. Read that when your memory starts leaving all the important details out, because the human brain does that. Third, ask yourself, what has materially changed? Not how strongly do I feel, what has changed? Have both people acknowledged the real reason why the relationship ended? Has there been consistent work, and I'm not talking promises made during one emotional conversation? Have the trust issues been addressed? Are your values and plans for the future compatible? Can you now communicate about the difficult things that you previously avoided? Is there accountability without defensiveness? Is there enough evidence to believe that the relationship would operate completely different from last time? If the answer is yes, then maybe there is something to consider carefully. I'm not against, again, reconciliation, but reconciliation should be based on more than missing each other. Otherwise, you are returning with the same people, the same problems, and a new promise that feelings will somehow be enough this time. Now, fourth, create a plan for the moments when you want to reach out. Who can you contact instead? Where can you go? What can you read? What do you need to remove from your phone? Do you need to stop checking their page? Do you need to mute certain people for a while? Do you need to schedule a therapy session, talk to a trusted friend, or pray, or take a walk, or simply allow yourself to cry and go to sleep? Make the decision before the feeling arrives. Because when the feeling is strong, you're going to want immediate relief. And finally, stop expecting yourself to choose your new life only once. You may have to choose it repeatedly. You choose it when you don't send the message. You choose it when you stop checking whether they've watched your story. You choose it when you make the plans make plans for a weekend instead of wanting to see if they contact you. You choose it when you stop building imaginary conversations around a version of them that has not shown up in real life. You choose it when you let a good memory be a good memory without making it a reason to restart the relationship. You choose it when you create new memories, new routines. You choose it when you allow yourself to meet new people without comparing every detail to your ex. And you choose it when you stop treating healing like a betrayal of what the two of you shared. Your new reality may feel unfamiliar for a while. That doesn't mean that it's wrong. It means you haven't lived here very long yet. And when you put all of this together, here is what I want you to leave with. If you still love them, but know you can't go back, I'm not going to tell you to stop loving them. I'm not going to tell you that you should be over it by now. I'm not going to tell you to pretend you don't miss them. Miss them. Let the feeling be honest. But then ask yourself, what else is true? I miss them and I remember why it ended. Or I love them and I know love did not resolve what kept hurting us. I'm grieving and I don't have to use contact to escape the grief. I can appreciate what we had without trying to recreate it. I can wish them well without trying to continue to move forward with them. I can have a difficult night without turning it into a new relationship decision. And if they do come back, I can evaluate what has actually changed instead of allowing the relief of seeing them to answer the question for me. You don't need to make them a bad person to choose yourself. You don't even need to decide or deny every good moment. You don't need to act like you never loved them. You don't need to wait until your feelings disappear. You may still love them when you decide not to call. You may still miss them when you remove yourself from the situation. You may still cry and know you are making a healthy decision, the most healthiest decision available to you. The breakthrough is not that you suddenly stop caring. The breakthrough is all in realizing that caring about someone and returning to them are two different decisions. You don't have to stop loving them before you choose yourself. You just have to stop treating every feeling like a direction. If this episode gave you something you needed, share it. Share it out. Share it with somebody who may be trying to make a decision from a lonely point. And hit the subscribe button to the Oh We're Talking podcast, because this is what we do here. We tell the truth about what happened, but we don't stop there. We find the breakthrough inside of it. Every life is a masterclass. Come for the story, leave with the breakthrough. I'll talk to you in the next episode.